And Bez Hashem Yisbarach, the title of today's Shiur, tonight's Shiur, is Human Nature versus Selfless Service. Obviously, we're speaking about selfless service to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. When we speak about human nature, insofar as it's being a source of conflict and clash with selfless, altruistic, L'Shem Shamayim service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the reason for this is, as we mentioned a second ago, human nature. In other words, when we try to analyze and we try to define human nature, so we come to the conclusion, the Achara'iyun, after exploring the content of human nature, so we come to the conclusion, which the Chazal tell us as well, that a person basically is identified by his mind, like the Rambam says, what's the advantage that a human being has above the animal kingdom is simply because he has seichel, intellect. However, the intellect is also a very cold and calculating, pragmatic intellect. Ein odom chete Elohim kein yesh loy. Kadosh Baruch Hu Elokim osas odom yosher. Kadosh Baruch Hu created man with a soul, with a mind, and that soul is in tune to Ratzon HaBorei, to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's almost natural for someone who stays a moral being, he was imbued with moral characteristics, if he develops it, so there's no way that he will not serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely. However, there are occasions when a person comes to the cold, calculating reasonings of the mind, that it might be worthwhile. He'll derive a certain pleasure, a certain benefit by lying, by cheating. It could be that he won't at the end and he'll do tshuva. And it could be that he'll succeed and he will see that there's absolutely no immediate punishment. So he might actually deceive himself into thinking it's not a transgression either. But that is a person, insofar as intellect is concerned, always pragmatic, practical. What can he get out of it? What can he benefit? And insofar as the intellect of a businessman is concerned, utilitarian individual, so once this becomes channeled into Avodas Hashem, so we have a problem. And that problem is simply that a person might come, not 100%, for sure, but there's a possibility that a person might come to somehow or other analyze and try to see what mitzvahs in Avodas Hashem are more beneficial to him insofar as reaping a reward in this world is concerned, and also believes in Hasharas HaNefesh and gaining a place in the world to come. There are these mitzvahs, activities the person engages in. Basically, this world is not a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards an individual for the mitzvahs that he fulfilled. That's the order of the day. Today we do, and tomorrow in another world. So that's the genuine, real world of reward. But nevertheless, there are plenty of activities you do in this world. You also get a reward. Like Chaper is saying, there are dividends that are extended in this world as well. So it could be that an individual will come and make his calculations from a perspective of cold, calculated, mercantile reasoning, and he will involve himself in certain mitzvahs that will produce the desired effect. So the Chazal tell us this is a terrible mistake, and it's based on Moshe Rabbeinu's statement in Parashas Eikev, which we read last week. V'hoya Eikev tishmu mishpatam eila u'shmaltem asisem eisam. So Rashi, of course, says, what are these mitzvahs that Moshe Rabbeinu was singling out? Eikev, ima mitzvahs hakaloi shadim doshba kevov tishmun. So there's an extra reward that Kadosh Baruch Hu issues for mitzvahs that, as Rashi comments, is loshan eikev v'hiyol. So if you will heed and observe the minor mitzvahs, which one usually tramples with his heels. In other words, there are certain mitzvahs, as we mentioned a moment ago, that a person whose approach to mitzvahs is a mercantile approach, what's more beneficial, what's more desirable, and perhaps whatever is easier for him to do. So if a person treats other mitzvahs as insignificant, disregards them, tramples them literally with his feet, so he will not have this extra reward. Moshe Rabbeinu singles this out. Moshe Rabbeinu notifies the Jewish people that this is a terrible, terrible defect, and it should be remedied. And the Chazal tell us, as we all know, haverotz lemitzvah kala kivachamura ki yato yedei matan scharon shel mitzvahs. And it's possible in these type of mitzvahs that a person tramples with his feet, totally disregards them, insignificant, lies a very, very great and hidden treasure. And it's interesting what the Rambam has now told us on the Mishnah that we mentioned a moment ago. Avirotz l'mitzvah kala k'mitzvah chamura k'iyata yedei matan scharon shel mitzvahs. A person should be swift to fulfill even what we call a minor mitzvah. Why? Because we really don't know the matan scharon shel mitzvah. So if we want a paradigmatic example of this, we have to turn to Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no other source. As we just mentioned, the Mishnah in Perek Vov, Mishnah Beis in Pirkei Avos, states emphatically that a person should be swift in fulfilling these minor mitzvahs. Benazai says, Avirotz, you have to, with great alacrity, you have to be swift, you have to run to fulfill what we would assume is a light mitzvah, not too important, even as one would run to a weighty one, because we actually don't know the compensation which we'll get for a mitzvah. And every mitzvah is goreres another mitzvah, so we already have a built-in intrinsic schar. So the Rambam says something fantastic. It's really unbelievable. So the Rambam says, if you want a paradigmatic example of this, I'll give you a very good example. In last week's parsha, we read Oz, as Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking, he's an Abbas Moyov, Oz Yavdo Moshe Sholosh Ore Miklat Mever Yarden. So Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to assign 6 cities of refuge for somebody that commits manslaughter involuntarily. And of course, we're all familiar with the mitzvah of making Ore Miklot, that if the one that committed manslaughter inadvertently flees to one of the Ore Miklot, so the Goyal Adam, the avenger, cannot kill him. In other words, he is safe and secure in the Ore Miklot. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu assigned 6 Ore Miklot. 3 Mever LaYarden, Trans-Jordan. We had B'nai Gad, B'nai Reuven, V'chatzi Shevet Menashe, part of the tribes settled there, and 3 others in Eretz Israel. So it's one mitzvah. And yet the Torah tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu was me'aver Hayalden, he could not enter Eretz Israel. He could not simply assign the 3 cities in Eretz Israel to be designated as Arei Miklot. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Moshe Rabbeinu did not fulfill the mitzvah. He assigned 3 cities, Me'ever LaYarden, to be Arei Miklot. So the Rambam noticed this, and the Rambam says on the mitzvah of Haverot, the mitzvah Kalike V'Chamura, on this Mishnah. So he said, "K'vahiru Chacham Aleim Hashalom Al Chidush Nifla B'Torah Oz Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Arei Miklot is a Chidush HaTorah." And the Chazal pointed this out. And look at the zirus al Maisa HaMitzvahs, the great enthusiasm and the alacrity and the swiftness in fulfilling, doing an act of a mitzvah, not fulfilling the mitzvah. He did not fulfill the mitzvah. There's no key of mitzvah. Zirus al Maisa mitzvahs. Oz Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Orim the Ever Hayarden v'Yadua Sheina Mayilos. They don't help. They don't achieve the goal. Shelo yeh bohem din Arei Miklot ad sheyuvdelu hashalosh ha'cheva sheberetz Yisrael. Omru, so Chazal say, Yodei Oya Moshe Rabbeinu Olav HaShalom, Shein Shalosh Orim Shebe'ever Hayarden Kol Tois, ad sheyuvdelu hashalosh sheberetz Yisrael. He knew this. Moshe Rabbeinu was indeed aware. The Chazal tell us that these 3 cities that he assigned to be Arei Miklot Be'ever LaYarden would not afford asylum until the 3 in Eretz Israel were set apart as well. However, Moshe Rabbeinu will never be able to fulfill the mitzvah in total. Said Moshe Rabbeinu, since the mitzvah has come into my power, I will fulfill it. But he couldn't fulfill it. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? And the Chazal say we have over here a tremendous example of Zirus HaMitzvah. So this was basically a limud for us. And the Rambam tells us exactly what lesson we derive. Im kayotze bo zeh b'Moshe Rabbeinu olav hasholem masik ha'mitus sholem sheb'shleimim nichsav lo hoyisef Chatzi mitzvahs asay al kol malosay v'shleimusay ein tzorich loymar sheyasu mishen itztarei nafsho. So the Rambam tells us we have over here a tremendous example, unbelievable. That Moshe Rabbeinu, the perceiver of truths, he was the perfect man of perfect men, who yearned to add 1/2 of a positive mitzvah to all of his virtuous mitzvahs that Moshe Rabbeinu did. Mind-boggling, we can't even begin to enumerate them. So it goes without saying that people like us that unfortunately need a lot of improvement, Allah Haskama Vakama, should be roots to all the mitzvahs, all inclusive, even a mitzvah kala, if we have the opportunity to perform it without consulting the cold intellect that always thinks in terms of reward and punishment, always thinks in terms of what's desirable and what I can benefit, what could be my profit. As a money manager would always think of the bottom line. The highest priority is not necessarily the bottom line. It's doing the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Interestingly, the Gedolei Yisrael, when they spoke about, and they spoke a lot about mitzvahs, Sodom Doshba Kevov, it was interesting to see their original insights. So we have over here a Baron Cutler. So the Baron Cutler said that basically speaking, each and every one of us is in danger. We're surrounded by enemies, and we're right in the middle of a siege of enemies, and our only salvation is doing mitzvahs. And therefore, any mitzvah that comes liyotcha should be related to as a tremendous opportunity of salvation. We're talking about from a selfish point of view. That's human nature. We'll soon see what selfless service means. And our mistake is that there are certain mitzvahs that are not even kalos, that are not even treated lightly by us. When David HaMelech said, Avoy nakeva yisuveni, the averos akalos, the light averos, the light transgression which a person tramples, so they will ultimately be a potential downfall beyond I didn't, why I didn't fulfill them, why I didn't relate to them as if they were weighty mitzvahs as well, because every mitzvah is very weighty. So the Baron Cutler said, where are we holding? We have such a mistake that we don't even relate to certain mitzvahs as kalos. We seem to hold them as mididal mostam, behavioral type of patterns. They're outstanding, they're noble. We're mizalzel behanogas derech eretz. But yet Chazal tell us derech eretz kadma l'Torah. What a mistake we made. Without derech eretz, our learning is worthless, because we will never have a true understanding. Derech eretz is kadma l'Torah, and by us hanogas derech eretz, politeness, good manners, simply smiling to somebody, asking how he's doing, in the simple, good manner type of cultured, refined people, so we don't even treat this as kalos. And the Rosh Yeshiva Zecher Tzaddik V'Kodesh Levracha told us something which is absolutely mind-boggling. After all, are we totally wrong? Are there not in the Torah averos chamuros, averos kalos, or the Torah itself, when it comes to punishment for mitzvahs loisasem, for transgressing negative commandments, has told us there's averos chamuros, the chayiv misus bezdin, there's chayiv veikares, there's a lam b'telasei. So we see that insofar as averos are concerned, it's something which became part of our mindset. Person might not daven tefillah b'tzibur, might do a small avera, but he will not eat chaylev, which is chayvik prisus. So how is it that the Chazal made a new formula? Mitzvahs kalos equals mitzvahs chamuros. By mitzvahs asay. So the Baron Cutler said we should turn our focus of attention to the Meir Dike Chazal. The Yalkut in Tillim says Hashem Tzadik Yivchan Bochan v'Moshe v'David Batzoyin. How is it that Moshe and David became outstanding leaders? Like Klal Yisrael, the Kadosh Baruch Hu administered a test, and they passed the test with flying colors. What was the test? They know Shas, they know Paiskim. No. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Rayatzai, was a pasture. David HaMelech was a pasture. So the test that HaKadosh Baruch Hu administered to these outstanding leaders was, will they pass the test of a Raya? And if they pass the test of a Rayatzai, a pasture of sheep, they will become the Roya Yisrael, the pasture of the Jewish people. What was the test? The Chazal tell us, insofar as Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned, he was a United Son Yisrael, he was the Roya, the pasture of Yisrael's sheep. So the Chazal tell us a very beautiful story. And Chazal tell us that basically to be a pastor is not a difficult undertaking. It's not intricate. It requires one basic characteristic trait, and that is compassion and care. So at this juncture, Chazal tell us a very beautiful story, which Aaron Cutler mentions as well. That one sheep strayed from the flock, and Moshe Rabbeinu pursued them. And all of a sudden, Moshe Rabbeinu saw that he was panting, and he went to a stream of water and he was drinking. And he drank from the stream of water. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Oy vavoy, I did not know that you were thirsty. Had I known that you were thirsty, I would have right away provided water to quench your thirst." So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He picked up the small sheep, put it on his shoulders, and returned it to the flock. So this is a Shem Tzadik Yifchan. Kadosh Baruch Hu was beichen Moshe Rabbeinu whether he will be able to be the leader of Klal Yisrael with what we would say is a davar kal, a very, very light type of test. Pass the test. So the question is, this makes him qualified to be the Manig Yisrael? No question about it. He showed enthusiasm. He showed responsibility for each and individual sheep. No question about it. He was very organized. He had care and concern. But how is it that this should be the test that would qualify him to be the Manig Yisrael? What is the proof? What is the exact proof here in this story that Moshe Rabbeinu was qualified to be the Manig Yisrael? After all, the Manig Yisrael has to deal with spirituality, has to be a great teacher, charismatic leader. That was not necessary in order to pass the test of the Roya Tzayim, which was administered to him. So Rabbi Soloveitchik answered, and Rabbi Aaron Cutler expounded on it, but we'll just say the simple answer. We don't have that much time, unfortunately. So Rabbi Soloveitchik Zatzal answered that he passed the test. How did he pass the test? With flying colors. Because instead of disciplining the sheep that strayed away, blaming him, I did everything possible to provide whatever was needed. You strayed away, you have to be disciplined. On the contrary, Moshe Rabbeinu undertook self-introspection and he was critical of himself. And he failed to see that the sheep was thirsty, because a leader has to be aware of the Rochel Hane'elomo, Lo Yiftach Piv. Animals cannot communicate their table of needs. And on the contrary, many of them suffer because they cannot in any way express the sorrow, the pain and suffering that they're having. Perhaps they're dying of thirst. So a Roya Tzoyin has to have that sensitivity and those sensitive powers of observation to notice that the Rachel and Eloma, those that cannot communicate, he also is able to discern their needs. So Moshe Rabbeinu admitted that there was one occasion that he didn't do it. And therefore he treated the Rachel, the lamb, with utmost compassion, put it on his shoulders. And by David HaMelech, the same thing. That's the test. If you have those sensitivities, a sensitive heart, those great powers of observation, to see the needs of the people, even those that cannot communicate their message. They're mute, they're shy, they simply can't tell you what they need, but you're always 24 hours around the clock, alert and aware, and you'll be swiftly fulfill what they need. So that is a raya from the sign that you are qualified to be a leader of the Jewish people. Indeed so. And also, Rabbi Soloveitchik mentioned that a person, I'll be the Baltanya, so Rav mentioned a very interesting point. Baltanya already points it out, or Rav elaborated on it. Everyone has a shlichus in this world. A one-timely shlichus above and beyond the fact that he was consecrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to serve him. Every person is, like Chaim Volozhin says, Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, consecrated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has to be devoted, we'll soon say, to Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that is the general shlichus that he has, came into the world to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's another mission that he has, a specific mission. And we don't know what that mission is. No one knows. The Riyah Kodesh said, if you want to know what your specific mission in the world is in Avodas Hashem, do what you don't want to do. Because the Satan always tries to prevent you from doing what you came into the world to. Anyway, that's what the Riyah Kodesh says. That's the criterion which a person can measure. But the Baltanya points out that it's possible to be something which you are totally unaware of. And you were placed in that position, you were placed in those circumstances and conditions, and this is what you're called upon to do. So therefore, your person has to be very careful to analyze the situation which HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed him in, and to make sure that he does not treat it lightly. So the story that's told over, there was a Talmid Chacham who came to the Baal Tanya, and he told him that unfortunately, wife is not well, children need him now to take care of them. He has to be a mother and father. It's very difficult for him to do it, not so much as the toil and effort that's required, but more than that, he is in deep depression. He really has sorrow that he cannot continue to learn like he did before. He only learned a few hours a day. He has to close his Gemara. And it's very difficult for him. He actually sighs and yearns to learn. And the feeling is an overwhelming feeling. It's overpowering. So the Baltanya told him, Baruch Hashem, here in Leida, you have thousands of people that learn, many of them day and night. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Talmidei Chachamim got a Shiur. In other cities, tremendous amounts of Talmidei Chacham. It would appear that the Ashkoch Elyono told you a message, transmitted a message to you that we don't need your learning anymore. It was very good b'shas you had it and continue to learn, but we don't need it. You know what we need? The krechts, the yearning. That itself, that you fulfill whatever you have to do, your daily schedule, all the activities that you engage in to help the Rebbetzin when she's not well, to deal with the welfare of the children, that's a very admirable thing. But it could be that what you dismiss, you hold as negative, it could be the very reason that you're in the world now. Because we want to view that side, that yearning, that longing to learn, that deep-seated feeling, how much you're in love with learning, how much you are devoted to that, but you can't learn. So and maybe that's what you came into the world for, and that's your mission. And we need you for that. And that's the story of Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon, on Shabbos of his mother's shoelace, got untied and she couldn't wear the sandal anymore, so she had to go barefoot and there was mud. He put his hands down and she went on his hands, trampled on his hands. And there was no one that was mechabed his mother like Reb Tarfon. Tarfon was a Tana Kadesh Elohim. One day when Reb Tarfon was sick, his mother came to the Beis Medrash. She said, please daven for him. And you know why you should daven for him? Because I never knew there could be a son so devoted to the welfare of his mother like him. On Shabbos, he goes down on his hand and kneels on his knees, puts his hands down that I should not, chas v'shalom, get my feet dirty. So the Rabbanon, the Chacham, and the Beis HaMedrash were very indifferent and said, oh, really? He hasn't come even to a half of the measurement that's necessary for Kibbud Avei. So she went away distraught. She felt, for somehow or other, the Chachamim simply disregarded her heartfelt plea, full-blooded plea that her son should become well again. The answer is that had they said, we'll daven, we'll pray that he totally recovers, the Chachamim were apprehensive that maybe that was the special mission that he had. Maybe that's the reason he came into this world. And if he fulfilled his mission, so he will not survive. So the Chazal said, no. He never came, as of yet, to even half of the measure that's required in Kibbud Ein. So here we have also Dvarim Kalim. Nobody would think that this would be a mission that perhaps is the special, unique mission that Reb Tarfon was brought into the world for. He's a Kodesh Elokim, Kadesh Elyon, a Tana Kadesh Elokim. No, that might not be the special mission, the special shlichus that he has. And therefore, a person can disregard nothing. Not a sigh for learning, not a krechts to learn, or to do a mitzvah, or a mitzvah of kibbud av, because we don't know exactly why we're here. And this, at this juncture, we would like to conclude with an insight that perhaps sounds a little revolutionary, but it would seem to be the Pashut Pshat. Many times we encounter that the Jewish people are maminim b'nei maminim. We have faith and we're the children of those who showed great faith. Emunah, mamin, is translated basically as faith, trust, faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, we see that that is not necessarily the case. It's much more than that. For example, when we we say it every day in davening, V'yah Yisrael, es Mitzrayim meisas vasayom. Jewish people saw their arch enemy was dead. V'yah. And then we say right away, V'yaminu b'Hashem v'Moshe Avdon. So usually, Amunah, believing in trust, usually reflects the meaning of believing in Rabbeinu Shalom, believing that came from heaven. But when we see something, we usually don't refer to it as believing. We see it. As V'yah Yisrael, as Mitzrayim meisas vasayom v'yaminu b'Hashem. What's the need to say V'yaminu b'Hashem? Of course they saw it. And they realized, they were aware that it was Min Hashemayim. What's V'yaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdoi? What does Moshe have to do? So Kriyas Yamsuf. So basically speaking, Emunah means much more than faith. It means faithfulness. And it's employed on many occasions to explain to us the context of seeing a phenomena, and because of that phenomena, the result was simply an inspiration and a motivation of reconfirmation in our entire Avodas Hashem, in our entire Judaism, in our entire acceptance of Kol HaTorah Kula. Just like we say Amen, means affirmation. So Emunah also means a reaffirmation of Kol HaTorah Kula, of our total commitment on Bereshis Bara Leini Kol Yisrael. This is something which I learned from my mentors of many years ago. They're the ones that survived the Holocaust. And it's a very strong possibility that even in a time not of seeing the hand of God, so to speak, but even a time of darkness, not only the best of times, but the worst of times, there's also a need of reconfirmation of being faithful from the beginning to the end, and reconfirming that in our Avodas Hashem. And we see that the Torah tells us, by Melchemes Amalek, that Moshe Rabbeinu picked up his arms above his head, and he was tired, and he needed somebody to hold his arms, but he still held them up. And the Torah tells us, "Vayihi yodav emunah ad bo hashemesh." What does emunah mean here? Faith? No, emunah is steadfast perseverance, unwavering commitment. Moshe Rabbeinu unwaveringly held his hands above his head and prayed until Amalek was defeated. It was a steadiness in the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu. And when Habakkuk says, Tzadik be'emunasa yichya, he doesn't refer that somehow or other a tzaddik will live because he has faith. That's obvious. It means that tzaddik, under all circumstances, the best of times and the worst of times, in the times of light and the times of darkness, has faithfulness, loyalty, steadfastness in governing a person's spiritual life and his moral convictions from A to Z. And the emunah is something which manifests itself in the conduct of our lives. And you can have a person that believes, no question about it. Ani Mami B'Emunah Shleima, all Yud Gimel Ikrim of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, praise fervently. And yet, when it comes to Ben Adam Lechaver, like a Baron Cutler points out, right? So he refrains from doing chasodim, from practicing charity, from doing good, from acting and conducting himself like a mensch. So he's it's worthless. That's what Chazal tell us. He's an idolater. Articulation of Shema Yisrael and the belief in the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no question about it, but it's expected to instill in us a total Avas Hashem and a total Yiras Hashem, and direct us toward the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in toto. And if we're Zoicha, we work at it, and we have that emunah of faithfulness, loyalty to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we will have absolutely no problem whatsoever with Bechlal even entertaining that there's mitzvahs kalois and there's mitzvahs chamurois. We'll be enthusiastic. It's lively, and we'll rutz the mitzvah kalo, which is only a mitzvah kalo in those that have the wrong perspective, because we are totally committed. And there are times during the day by Kriya Shema, which we reaffirm our commitment not only to the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but that's a catalyst to reaffirm our faith to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our faithfulness to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even to those halakim of the Torah which require from us to change our human nature, to be selfless. So once we realize the principle of steadfastness, perseverance, to Kol HaTorah Kulo, we will also come to worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu, serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu selflessly. Thank you very much.